Hello, friends. Just want to make sure I'm not making or have something accidentally funneling sound into my. Nope. All right, I'm good. And we are here. Hello, friends. How's everyone doing? Welcome to the stream. As you can see, I got some cat action going on back there. Yeah. So. Welcome to the Step Back Countdown stream for the 27th of September. Woo! This is a weekly stream that I do every Thursday in basically the hour before a new Step Back video is born. And it's always a fun thing. I get to hang out with you guys, answer questions, and interact. And then right after the video's done, you get a new Step Back video. So everyone wins. And it is a beautiful day out today. And everything is just kind of working out really well. So, what could we talk about? Who's in the chat today? Let's take a look. We've got Butts from Jenga Tree 121. We've got Hellfox and Ooga Booga and Dave and Michael Kirshner and Ron and 255 AD with always with the good questions, and Luke Lee. All right, so a lot of the regulars are here today. Awesome. Let me just get the. Oh, this video has 20 views already, so something's doing well. This video that comes out in an hour looks like it's got reason to be optimistic about it. It's I should say, to get kind of started, actually, that this video that's coming out in an hour is the first video that I have made with input from viewers, because this video was the #1 most voted up idea on Idea Informer, which is a web page where you can submit video ideas for Step Back videos and upvote them, and I pick from them for video subjects. So I'm just gonna give you guys that in the chat. Let's just get on this, take down some questions. Okay, so yeah, so the video that comes out soon was the top-rated video on that site, and so if you have any videos that you want to see happen, or if you want to upvote on different video ideas so that your voice is represented, then you can go for it. It's pretty fun. So. First question of the afternoon. First question of the afternoon is from 255 AD, asking, is there a way to be critical of problematic stuff going on in minority communities without giving social capital to bigots who think that those minorities should be removed or wiped out? Oh boy, you always give me the hardest questions. It's a good way to start. So I do think that you have to be cognizant in these situations about your platform and who's listening, and you have to tailor your language to make sure that you are not accidentally doing that. Like, you have to be aware that you can critique things that are going on in said communities. You just need to realize that there are people who are going to misinterpret what you say, so you have to preempt those in a way. You have to sort of acknowledge that, like, if you want to say, like, one example that comes up, there are critiques that you can have with like patriarchy in like Islamic communities and some Islamic communities and such like that, and even by saying that, like, to the audience of you guys, like, it's. That I am a lifelong activist against Islamophobia. That Islamophobia is a issue I care a lot about and I've done a lot of research on, and that I think that we really need to handle what's going on when it comes to our our treatment of Muslim people, because it's a racist thing. But there's no denying that, like, in countries like Saudi Arabia, Islam is used as a cudgel in order to force, basically, in order to force women into situations that are brutal. And I don't think anybody denies that, except maybe Saudi Arabia. So yeah, that's like, you just have to be specific. You just have to be able to outline the things that you are critiquing, and realizing that you are not talking into a void, and you have to realize that the words you say are going to happen in a context, and so you have to be surgical and sensitive and understanding, and maybe be a little bit more on top of think a lot about, like, whether or not it's really your place to critique. For example, there are a lot of times, especially when it comes to religion, where, yeah, there's a lot of archaic and old patriarchal and oppressive stuff in religion that I don't agree with those sentiments. I'm not part of that religion, but instead of me trying to spend what platform I have complaining about this group of people or this religion or this aspect of a religion, I would rather amplify the voices of those who are in said movement, who are in that group, and are trying to reform it. One good example that came up in Curious Cat the other day was about ex-Muslims and how I felt about them. And I said that a lot of ex-Muslims are right to have the feelings that they have. They're not necessarily wrong about the critiques they have of religion, but they don't acknowledge that just by you complaining about Muslims or Islam doesn't mean they're going to go away. Islam is going to exist, has been around for over 1,000 years, and it's going to be around long after you are dead. And so you have to make peace with that. You have to figure out what is constructive, and that's why, like, I'm more interested in amplifying voices of Muslims who are trying to reform the faith and make it more inclusive and democratic from their own theology. And I think that those are the voices I would like to amplify in order to make things better. I don't feel entitled to always be the source of the opinion. I'd rather elevate somebody who is actually in the context that can speak to it in a constructive way that's not trying to amplify hate towards a group. That was a long answer. Oh my. I gotta turn this thingy. I think I do this every single stream. I forget to turn my my notifications off, and then when Twitch updates and realizes that I'm because this is on Twitch as well, that when I'm working, I'll say, like, oh, you can, like, follow your stream there. So it's like, that's my problem. Okay. Islam is not a race, and if you think about it, should Christianity be a race of the Jews? Alright, actually, you know what? You're going to... Hellfox is showing exactly the kind of very poorly thought out thinking that a lot of the radical right, because Hellfox is an alt-right shitlord, that, you've got this sort of idea that, oh yeah, well, Islam isn't a race, Muslim isn't a skin color, so therefore race, it's not a racist thing, when, like, the video that I have coming out talks about a group that are not Muslims, but they are from the Middle East, and when they go to Western countries as refugees, first of all, they are suffering because they're getting denied access to countries based on Islamophobic laws, and on top of that, they experience hate crimes and discrimination when they get to the countries that they are going to. And those two things together show that, yeah, maybe Islam isn't a race, but Islamophobia sure is goddamn racist. You can also say that, oh, look, there's a lot of discrimination. When Islamophobia seems to raise its head, it's always against people from the Middle East and North Africa, but doesn't seem to be targeted at, like, Bulgarian Muslims or, like, Albanian Muslims or Bosnian Muslims or, any of the other Eastern European white Muslims. It's usually Middle Eastern people, North Africans, and Turks, and maybe people from South Asia. To say Islamophobia is not racist is to deny that the first hate crime that happened after 9/11 was against a Sikh gas station attendant. And Sikhs are part of a monotheistic religion that has nothing to do with Islam. And yet, because they are South Asian, typically, and wear turbans, they're targeted for Islamophobic hate crimes. So, like, yeah, Islamophobia is racist. And if you are, and by flaming the fires of hatred against a group of people, you are enabling racist thought. So, no, Islamophobia is racist. Okay. I guess we should probably move along. Turks would be considered white if the Byzantine Empire still existed. One of my good friends is Turkish, and he is, like, if you didn't know that he had this, like, super Turkish name and that he was a Muslim, you would not be able to tell that he was either of those things. Like, he has blonde hair. He looks less like someone from the Middle East than I do. He looks like, pure white Aryan look, but either way, it's besides the fact. Because Islamophobia is so bombarded with racist overtones that are explicitly targeting people from the MENA region and from South Asia. Doesn't acknowledge things like the most populous Muslim country on earth is Indonesia, which is definitely not made up of people who look like that, and Indonesian Muslims don't exactly get the exact same hate crime numbers that you see. Yeah. It's a whole thing. Yeah. Luke Lee, I'm good. How are you? I am pretty good. Today is a fun day. I'm working on the script for next week's video, and I've been very lazy about that, but I am going to probably start working on it after the stream, basically, after the video comes out. And then I've got some work for my day job to do over the weekend, so I'm feeling pretty busy, but I'm starting to, for the first time in my life, get into this weird groove where there's a normal rhythm to my week that isn't school. This is my first September where I didn't have classes, I didn't have teaching to do, and I wasn't a student, and I'm just kind of working, which is a whole thing. Booga Booga. So Tristan, I know it happened a few weeks ago, but what did you think of the Adventure Time finale, or did you never watch Adventure Time to begin with? Adventure Time is a show that I have not watched, but I have on my list of shows to potentially watch in the future. I've been told it's good, but I don't really know. It was one of those. I think I had issues getting into the Adult Swim stoner cartoons. I wasn't really a big fan of Aqua Teen Hunger Force, and I only got into Rick and Morty a year ago when season 3 came out. So I've been sort of, because of how much I disliked Aqua Teen Hunger Force, I was really not into Adult Swim stuff for a very long time, and it's just recently I'm starting to check it out. So Adventure Time is on my list of shows to check out in the future. I have the first season ready to watch. You just gotta, get around to it at some point. I got a lot of shows to watch, so. Hmm. Ron, are you paying attention to the Kavanaugh hearings? A little bit. I'm not really. I'm not really watching all that much. I'm not watching it like live or anything like that. I've been following like what's been going on CNN. From what I'm told, it's been pretty intense. That the woman, her name is her last name's Ford. I don't remember her first name, but she's come forward with like very explicit details, and is very sure. And there's a lot of corroborating evidence of friends and psychiatrists and all sorts of people are very much making a very strong case against Brett Kavanaugh, and that's great, because Brett Kavanaugh would be the last piece in this 4-decade-long plan by the Republican Party to basically take over the Supreme Court and control the branches of government. They would control all the branches of government at that point, and they would want to push a agenda that would basically unwrite all of American social progress since the Civil War. Like, Brett Kavanaugh winning means like an attempt to go back to things like segregation, banning abortion, basically moving society back to. You could even see laws like explicit bans on racial groups being allowed into the country. Things like that could all be brought back, because with the Supreme Court with a radical right-wing Supreme Court, the chances of taking with the Supreme Court like that, the chances of setting America back to a 19th century level of protections based on race and gender and immigration and on the economy, like expect like Victorian style things again, and yeah, segregation would be back, baby, and it would be disgusting. But the Republicans are almost there, and they know that they're probably going to lose the House this like next month or in November, and they're probably going to lose the Senate, or they might lose the Senate, but it's not very likely because the Democrats actually have a lot of seats that they have to deal with. So they know that if they don't get this through right now, chances are they're not going to be able to get through a like fascist, like a Brett Kavanaugh fascist type judge anytime soon, and their whole plan kind of falls apart. So that's why they're doubling down, get to the point where like they were making these like completely fabricated like long conspiracies that it was actually some other dude who looks like Brett Kavanaugh that did it, and it's like, oh my god, this is getting ridiculous. So yeah, there's a lot on the table here. The right to abortion, the right to like, bans on segregation, the Voting Rights Act, which has already actually been stripped quite a bit. Any consumer protections, the things that kept like listeria out of canned meat, all of those protections are up for grabs because of Brett Kavanaugh. And we'll see where it goes, because if he actually becomes a Supreme Court justice, which is not out of the question now, like, Republicans are very much sheep and follow their leader, so you'd probably see huge step back for America. And not like my channel, like a bad version of it. Christian, if you played WoW, which race/class would you pick? Okay, I actually do. Right now, my main character in WoW is a goblin mage. That's what I'm playing. In the past, when I this is like me coming back after like an almost 10-year-long break, but in the past I played a Draenei shaman for a while, and before that I think I played a gnome rogue. So there you go. That's my quick history. Um, Michael Kirshner, what do you think about who do you think will be the next SCOTUS judge? I, oh, I would still, I still think that it might be Brett Kavanaugh. I just see like there is no low that Republicans won't go to. Um, there's no low that Republicans won't go to uh, in order to win their political goals, and so their goal of turning America into a fascist dictatorship will not be stopped by somebody just because he sexually assaulted a whole bunch of women. Like that's like the Republican playbook at this point. I am willing to be pleasantly surprised if he actually loses, because I think it's just going to go through anyway. I don't think he's going to withdraw at this point. Okay. It's depressing. 255 AD. Can you talk more about why you think inflation is good? Isn't it a bad thing if the price of stuff goes up? Okay, so I said this I think I said this like I think I said it on Tuesday. So inflation, which is the increasing of the money supply, is a thing when done to a reasonable degree can actually be good. So like rich people, especially people who run banks, there is a strong incentive to to control inflation, and if anything, try to tightly control the money supply, for a couple reasons. If you are a banker and you own, and banks for the most part make their money by owning debt, so they lend money to people and they collect the interest rates on debt, and the way the money supply works is that the power that a dollar has, the power that a euro has, is based on what percentage of the overall money supply it's worth. And if the money supply gets much larger, a dollar's worth becomes much less. People end up having to, things start raising in prices and things like that. But it also means that if you go through a period of inflation, debts, like people's collected debts, become worth less. And so there's a lot of cases in which if you are, say, students who don't really have that much work, don't really have money anyway, we're all of a sudden finding that there was like a little bit of inflation above like a tiny amount that decreased the value of their debts by like a percent. That would be a pretty huge, that would help quite a bit. And it also helps for like, independent farmers who are often in debt, and small businesses that are often in debt when they're first starting off. So that's why. That's the things that inflation can also be used for. Also, typically inflation happens when governments artificially increase the supply of money in order to be more reflective when an economic crisis is happening. If you have a very tightly controlled money supply, like what happened during the Depression, and a government is not able to flood money into a specific sector or a specific thing in order to keep something running, then they become inflexible and unable to handle economic shocks. And so being tightly tied to like resources, like with the American, it was the gold standard, they would end up failing at, when the economy collapses, they would not be able to do anything. They'd be too controlled because the government only has so much money based on how much gold they have, and that's problematic. That can be quite a problem. So inflation, or at least the ability to create inflation, can be very helpful for non-wealthy people in the right circumstances. Now, runaway hyperinflation, especially runaway hyperinflation like we're seeing, like has been seen in Zimbabwe or what happened in the Weimar Republic, can be a runaway disaster. But there are cases where it actually can help. And yeah. Oh my. Trying to see like how far behind we are, but yeah. Is there any more questions that I've messed up with? Just gonna swoop up a few more questions while I wait for the thing I just said to get all caught up. Okay. Alright, Jenga Tree 121. Have you watched any of the MythCon debates this year? No, MythCon is not something that I'm really interested in following. MythCon is, for those who don't know what it is, it's a yearly convention where they want to have rational-ish debate, but usually what it means is they invite a bunch of like far-right, like alt-right, neo-Nazi people who don't have any actual intellectual credentials or any actual valuable things to say. They bring people like Sargon of Akkad, for example, who is shown to be a gigantic pseudo-intellectual who doesn't do any research, who barely reads the articles that he says he has done research with, and then spouts off reactionary Nazi conspiracy theories and things like that to his audience. And so Sargon, for example, gets invited to MythCon because he has an audience. So they're not really inviting people because they are good skeptics or because they are solid thinkers or anything like that. They invite people because they have audiences, and because they invite people like Sargon, I have no desire to pay attention to it whatsoever. I don't want to give it relevance. But yeah, Sargon of Akkad is a terrible, terrible person, and he runs a terrible, terrible YouTube channel that is hopefully going to become less relevant as his it seems like his 15 minutes have been stretched out quite thin. But like, I don't know, it doesn't seem to matter because he doesn't really care about intellectual rigor. Like, it's been shown over and over again that he has like reported information from an article where he showed that he didn't even finish the abstract before drawing his conclusions and talking about it. And it's just so, like, it's such a low standard of scholarship that, like, it shows that he has no idea what he's doing. He is such a pseudo-intellect. He pretends like he knows what he's talking about. He actually knows very little. Yeah. Christian Vibrecht, do you watch Massaman's videos? I don't know what that is. Isaac Gown, what's your favorite modern philosopher? I would probably say it would be Noam Chomsky. I mean, he's still alive, so I think it technically works. He's very old. He's like in his like late 80s or something like that. But yeah, Noam Chomsky. He's if I am kind of desperate to see Noam Chomsky speak sometime before he dies. He's somebody that I am always watching to see when he comes to speak in Toronto, because I will go. He's a very formative figure in my personal political philosophy and my politics in general. And so he's a very special person to me. Craig Morrison asks, will you do a video on the Paris Commune? I am working on one. It's going to be a... I'm tempting these projects where I'm going to make a few of these a year, where I'm going to make these really big documentaries that have lots of collaborations and lots of like interviews with actual historians, and are like actually like long and really detailed and really interesting. I'm planning on doing a few of these, maybe like one or two a year, and the one I'm working on right now is on the Paris Commune. And I know that I've got some historians who are willing to talk to me about it. People have written books about the Paris Commune, and I also have a whole bunch of anarchist YouTubers who are going to be part of the. You're gonna like, yeah. He's the I've got a lot of collaborations lined up for it, so it's gonna be like a huge deal. Oh boy. Okay. So hold on, Craig Morrison. I'm working on it. Jenga Tree 121, have you watched American Horror Story? I've watched a few episodes of the first season of American Horror Story. I wasn't too into it, but I've been told that... I apologize if you can hear that. That's a helicopter that flew over my building. Yeah, so I plan on... I've watched American Horror Story. I've watched a few episodes of the first season. I wasn't too thrilled. I didn't really think it was all that great. But I have been turned off by a show that I later came back to and loved, so... hopefully it's because I'm wrong, because I've been told that there are seasons that are really good, and because the seasons are not the seasons of American Horror Story are independent of each other, so you can you don't have to watch every single season, that I'll figure out which ones are good and just watch those. Isaac, did you see Trudeau with the Spanish PM? What do you think? I don't know what Justin Trudeau did with the Spanish PM, but I imagine he made a fool of himself, because that's what JT does. Hungarian, sorry I arrived late. What do you think about Hungary's Fidesz part buying all the major news networks? I mean, if you are a quasi-fascist who wannabe dictator, controlling the media is an important part of, of taking over the country. And you would have to be pretty blind to not notice that, to not know that, we're moving, that Hungary is moving towards fascism at an alarmingly fast rate. They are not going to be a democratic country for very long. It's almost the president of Hungary is openly taking over parts of the major organs of the government, and will no longer Hungary will effectively no longer be a democracy pretty soon. And so yeah, this just feels like part of it. Oh, the helicopter thing. Yeah, so in my my neighborhood, I live in downtown in a large city, and I live also near a bunch of hospitals. And so if they need to get to somebody faster than an ambulance can get to, they'll use helicopters. Okay, let's see. Where do we get? And Hungary is not alone, by the way, in that. Poland is very hot on their heels. Poland and Hungary are going down, it seems, a very similar path towards open fascist dictatorships, which is lovely. Ooga booga. When I learnt about the Civil War, I was taught the Republicans were the progressive-ish party. Is this correct, or just English teacher messing up their facts? No, that's actually true. The Republicans were the leftish party. It's hard to really, the left and right weren't really things in the 19th century, but the Republican Party in the Civil War were the was the party of Abraham Lincoln and the Union and keeping America together. But there was a change in the party's constituencies over the 20th century. For example, the Democratic Party was this southern-focused conservative party until the late 19th century, when they started to make common cause with the populist movement, which was like this um, left wing pro farming like movement that was against northern industrial capitalists. And so in the late 19th century, the Democrat and Republican divide was more of a southern and farmers and immigrants and at some points even some like black progressives, where you had like the party of the KKK and some black activists in the same party, which was really weird. But yeah, it was a coalition of these kind of interest groups versus the Republicans, which were made up of Protestant northern rich people and industrialists, and also a very, very, very corrupt party at that point. And that shifted also a lot more when the socialists made big gains in the 1912 election, and Woodrow Wilson sort of absorbed the like old left, like the socialist, like a lot of socialist movements, a lot of progressive movements, when Woodrow Wilson like welcomed them into the Democratic fold. And from that point onwards, the Democrats were way more of a left-wing party than they were in the past. On top of that, they still held the South, and this is why you see in the first half of the 20th century, the Democrats basically like owned government. But after, in the 1960s, when George Wallace made a third-party run for president, all of the South, basically like the Democrats passed the Civil Rights Act, and George Wallace, who was a former Democrat, basically ran a campaign to be sort of like a Democrat, but basically was openly like we need to keep segregation, and racism ran wild. And while he didn't win the election, he didn't run in the election, while he didn't win the election, the South all voted for him. And after that, the Republicans decided to use some coded language to basically say that they supported segregation, or at least they supported a state's right to practice segregation. And ever since then, the first election with that was Richard Nixon in 1968. And after that, basically the entire South was voting Republican. And that's how the Republican Party has sort of become the party of wealthy people and conservative right-wingers, and like racists in the South. And the Democrats have been made up of virtually everybody else. And as time has moved along, the Republican Party has become a lot more ideologically right-wing, to the point now where they're virtually indistinguishable from like white nationalists. And the Democratic Party is such a wide tent party that it's hard to pin down any actual statements they have about anything. So like the Democratic Party just is trying to be whatever the Republicans aren't, and the Republicans are increasingly turning into a more and more extreme right party. It's been a weird ride. All right. I know you don't like the... Alright, 25580, I know you don't like the police, but does that mean you wouldn't call them if you're the victim of a serious crime? Oh, boy. Jeez, okay. Hey, Michael Collins. How's it going? Hey, Phoebe. Would I call the police if I was the victim of a serious crime? That depends very much on the crime. There's a whole thing where, like, there's like a child thing about like when to call the teacher, you know. It's basically like this like little thing that they made to teach kids not to be tattletales, and one of the things that it says is like, is this something like I would think more about what a what like, is this a thing that I can resolve myself? Is this actually a crime? There would be a lot of thinking about whether or not this is something that needs to be brought to the police in. But like, yeah, if I was being like literally like murdered, we don't have like community patrols. We don't have like community-based safety organizations or anything like that that like would replace the police. There's no alternative to the police at the moment. So yeah, you kind of have to call the police. I would prefer if there was an option that had less risk to my life and the lives of everybody who come in contact with them. But in the case if like my life was on the line, I don't know what else to do in that case. And in some cases, like if I got robbed for a very small amount of personal property, there's really no chance the police are ever going to find those things anyway. So like that's not a thing that's worth reporting. But if I was like literally being murdered or something, yeah, I'd probably try to make that call. If I even had the time to do that. Most of the time you don't. Most of the time, like, the police don't really save you from, like, a horribly violent crime. They will try to catch the person who did it afterwards. But they very, very, very rarely do they ever actually prevent crimes. Jess in Chen, what do you think about the historicity of Jesus? The historicity of Jesus, I have a pretty it's a tough thing. I think that from what I have picked up, the general historical consensus is that there was a Jesus of some kind. There's almost no actual details about who this person was or what things they did. Virtually every detail of their life is mythology that is taken from various other prominent myths in the region, and it's not exactly detailed about who this person was and what they did, except that they were probably a prominent religious leader who was executed, and that's about all we know. Everything after that is hard to tell, but it does seem like the evidence is overwhelming that at least he did exist. Dan, favorite work of historical fiction? Ooh, I have to think about that. I need to. Oh man, what's a good piece of historical fiction? I'm trying to think of I don't think I've read much historical fiction. Clothar the Frank, The Pillars of the Earth. That's a pretty good book. I'm gonna go with Pillars of the Earth. It's kind of like, you know, like pedestrian fiction, but it's pretty good. And it's about a mason and his family, and the building of a cathedral in a medieval town. It's pretty interesting. Kind of like a slice of medieval life in that period. Christian, if the Purge became a real holiday, which state would you celebrate? Which state would you celebrate in? Ooh, Vermont, I guess. I like Vermont. I wish I could go there right now. If the Purge, yeah, the whole thing about the Purge is like, I think that if the Purge were real, the amount of actual like murders and destruction that would happen would be very low. The amount of like looting and robbing and stuff like that would be way more. And even that, I think that would be kind of tempered. If anything, people would just stay out all night to you know, get around alcohol laws. But a lot of the things that like the Purge movies say would happen wouldn't actually happen. And I think there's like a movie that actually shows that like people really don't have that much of a, like, people don't seem to have that much free, like, interest in committing violence even in the Purge movies, and they kind of force them into it, which I think is really interesting. Labor does not care about us, the toys aren't care. He cares about British people. Okay. Goodbye. Yeah, don't need racism in this channel, sorry. Okay. What do you think of Francis Fukuyama? Very, very wrong person. Francis Fukuyama is the person who, the neoliberal guy who said at the wake of the death of the Soviet Union that there would basically be no, that we reached the end of history, and that liberal, democratic, capitalist countries are the end state of all history, which is showing to be the most wrong thing that has ever been said in human history. including Neville Chamberlain's "Peace in Our Time" thing, and I do think that it would be I do think that he's even turned around on that. I think Francis Fukuyama even admits that he was wrong, and even though he's still a super right wing like neoliberal, the last thing I've heard him say, like temporarily, is he did an interview on the Ezra Klein show where he was saying like, yeah, the biggest issue that the world has is growing inequality, and that's like basically the situation that the world's in right now. And so I mean, I guess he's like, he's getting there. He seems to have changed quite a bit in the last 30 years. All right. What is your favorite anarchist-themed band? I actually don't know of any at the top of my head. Michael Kirchner, would Hungary be expelled from the EU? Should Hungary be expelled from the EU if that happens? I mean, it actually is in the rules of the European Union that you have to be a democracy, so yes, I guess. It's definitely a thing. Jenga Tree, can you speak fluent Canadian French? Not fluent. I can speak it kind of haphazardly, but I'm okay, but I'm not really that great. Dan, what was your thesis about? My thesis was about narrative and the construction of a shared history, and how we decide what the history is going to be. Like where it's a whole like thing about like how we construct a collective past and like decide what our story is. And then I tried to show how that happens using 9/11 as an example. But it involved a whole lot of like machine learning and some weird stuff that it really got out of my hands, and I was too busy doing step back, so I kind of just got out of the program. So I never actually finished it. Craig Morrison, what's this video about? This video is one of my religion videos. It's about the Yazidis, which is a strange small religion focused out of northern Iraq. Jeff Isaac, Kropotkin or Bakunin? Definitely Kropotkin. Bread Book is great. 255 AD. Why do you keep predicting the world will be anarcho-communist in the future when it feels like the world is getting more and more fascistic? And don't you think violence can stop that trend? Jeez. Somebody is definitely trying to call me out on that one. No. The world, there is a crisis of capitalism happening right now. The same time, like the capitalist world order is collapsing at a fantastic rate because the way that technology is moving, the way that the economy is developing is not conducive to a capitalist economy. And the need to have people who have money to buy consumable products versus the need to cut as many laborers as possible and automate as many things as possible to increase profits are hitting each other in the worst way possible. And it's going to lead to a lot more extreme things like the whole like fascist movement that's going on right around the world right now. In the longer term, if we can survive this, I am under the impression that that the long-term future doesn't like capitalism can't survive post-scarcity, which is the thing that we are moving towards and we don't really know how to process. The transition is going to be ugly, and I don't know how we're going to survive it in any good and safe way, but I think that's where we're at. As far as like whether or not killing people who disagree with us is going to be the way to solve these problems, maybe in self-defense, but for the most part, introducing the act of murder in order to get your political goals across is a self-defeating idea because, no matter how terrible Nazis are, they have friends and family members who are not Nazis, and they will take it quite personally if you kill a close friend of theirs, and they will hate you and everything you stand for, even if you are doing things for the noblest of purposes, because you have literally given them personal stake in your downfall, and it will just create an endless cycle of perpetual violence, as they do the same to people like you. And in the end, they have all the power. They have all the military. They have all the drones. And there's really no way of defeating it. There has to be an alternative. If there isn't an alternative, we're doomed. Because just like we're going to kill the forces of some of the most powerful militaries on Earth and some of the most powerful people on Earth is a self-defeating thought. It's not gonna... there's no victory in that. All right. I start moving a bit faster. We're running out of time. Do you think Trotskyism is outdated nowadays in an almost full capitalist world? Yes, Trotskyism has always been a fool's errand. The whole idea of the vanguard party and trying to create a global revolution from the top down it's a fool's errand. It was never going to work. That's just, yeah, it's the opposite of what the principles of Marxism are supposed to be about. The idea that this is a bottoms-up movement to seize the means of production for everybody. That's not going to happen with like the vanguard party and the appropriation of things through force, and it's just no. If you had to be one, Amish or Mormons? I'll go with Mormons. Oh man, Mormons can't do a whole lot. Amish people can't do a whole lot either, so at least Mormons get the internet. 255 AD, when, if ever, is it morally acceptable to take a person's children away? To save them from abuse? That seems like a pretty good reason to take someone's kids away. Tristan, what do you think about the whole safe space thing? I think that it's a good idea. Do you know how much... If you're not like a cishet white dude, do you know like how much bullshit you put up with on a like daily basis? Like you are like every day, like life is just a bunch of people giving you shit for random small things. To create a place where you just don't have to deal with that for a little bit is perfectly understandable, and I don't see what the problem is. The only thing that I could think of that like the only people who complain about it are like these like reactionary people who don't understand, who seem to have a distinct interest in making sure that they don't have an appreciation for the kind of like bullshit that people deal with on a day-to-day basis. Because it doesn't affect me, it doesn't matter. That seems to be like a lot of the reactionary thinking. Geshtin, if Poland and Hungary are proto-fascist countries, wouldn't Russia also be considered as such? I mean, yeah, they are a increasingly increasingly less democratic country. They are trying to do so through a nationalist lens and the use of religion. And there's a lot of reactionary movements, a lot of homophobic actions. I don't understand the quote left-wing people who seem to think that just because he opposes the United States, that somehow, like, Vladimir Putin is some sort of, like, great ally in the greater left movement. I think that that is a real, like, don't watch Russia Today, people. Just don't. It's bad for you. Why do Japan and Italy not act as apologetic as Germany in reference to their actions in World War II? Well, because Germany has gone through a very big learning process. They take their history with World War II very seriously, and they teach World War II in a very commendable way to their young people. And also, Japan is probably the worst at denying the atrocities they committed. But Italy never had a Holocaust, which I think takes it to a whole new level. Oh boy. Would you know my name if I found you in heaven? Isaac Gown? Sure. Ooga Booga Tristan, if global anarchy is somehow declared, what group of people? What a group of people of starting their own new country? Wait. Um, Honestly, like, I think that I don't know if I think I know what the answer or what the question is here, but like the idea of starting a new country. Well, I do think that in many ways the incentives to create countries and to dominate over others would have to be sort of removed from the equation. And though that's things like a culture that values competition and domination and an economy that's based on not having enough resources and things like that. I feel like the incentives would just disappear if we didn't have to work, if we were under an anarchist paradigm and had and did not have to worry about material resources day to day. Yeah. What do you think about if Trump wins on moving to Canada Americans? I know a couple of them. I don't know. It depends upon, like, if I was an American, and I was somebody who I knew was like going to be subjected to like actual oppression, possible violence, and death. Like if I was a Hispanic American, if I was a woman, if I was a Muslim American, and Trump got elected, I put some serious thought into leaving, because you realize that somebody who just scapegoated you and has shown like absolute vitriol towards people just based on who they are, is now the leader of a country. Like, yeah, it'd be a pretty good time to think maybe we should think of another place to go, because this isn't great. I wouldn't blame anybody for that. Um, yeah. All right. We have two more questions left, and then I think that is the, well, we have about 3 minutes left. So, what is child abuse? A lot of atheists think raising your kids to be religious is abuse. I do think a lot of the people who are atheists in that sense tend to be just as dogmatic and just as insistent on forcing everybody to their point of view as religious people are. Child abuse is when a parent is, through their actions, causing physical trauma, psychological trauma, or emotional trauma to children, to their children. Like, if you are actively making your children like hate themselves and treat them terribly and hit them and like all those things, like those are all very sort of very bad things to do to kids, that we should definitely remove them from the situation if we can, in order for their own safety. Yeah. If you had to be a minority, what would you choose? Oh, geez, I don't think I can answer that question anyway. That is good. Sorry. Luke Lee, is Canada accepting American refugees? I'm on my way now. No. You can't go to... Well, no, you can't. The one thing that we are dealing with is there's a couple things where there's a movement to try and get Canada to remove the United States as a safe third country. So, like, there's this whole thing in, like, the movement of refugees and people who are escaping violence, that if somebody tries to get into your country, but they have already escaped into a into what's considered a third space safe country, that you can reject their refugee application because they're already somewhere that's safe and that they should be staying there. And there is a movement in Canada to remove the United States from that list, where the United States is no longer a safe country for refugees, and that somebody who is escaping into Canada through America won't just be sent back to the United States, because it's very likely that they won't be safe there either. But it'd be interesting to see if if Canada ever starts taking like actual like people who want like asylum in Canada, because that'll be very reminiscent of when Canada kept a lot of people escaping slavery in asylum. Thought Slime or non-compete? I like both of them, but Thought Slime is a personal friend of mine, so go with that. What's your opinion of affirmative action? I think it's a band-aid for a tough situation, but it is a good band-aid. It's a useful one for the current context we're in. It's not a permanent solution, but it is a solution. And what do people say when they want to say goodbye? They say bye. I guess like now we are out of time. It's 2 o'clock, so whew, that went by fast. Here is a link to today's video, and we'll see you guys. I guess next show would be Tuesday. Bye.